A lot of people in Australia have forgotten about Frank Sedgman, who was such a famous Australian tennis player that he was one of the most famous men in the world at the start of the 50s. Because if you look back at all the records, you'll see that the last man to win all three Wimbledon doubles titles in the 1 year, in 1952, was Frank Sedgman. He was also the first Australian to win the US Open. And he said he always feared coming up to Milton to play because some of those Queenslanders, they were so hard to beat.
Hi, I'm Charlie Fanker. As a very young player, the first legend of Australian tennis my parents told me about was Frank Sedgman. As a friend of the family, I was so lucky to meet Frank over the years many different times, and what a wonderful man he was, as well as a great champion. And it's an absolute pleasure and real honour for me to be introducing Frank Sedgman on the YouTube channel here.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Peter Racer here from Fruit Park YouTube channel. We're here this morning with Frank Sedgman, and the first thing we're going to hear about this morning is about the win in 1952, the Queensland Open. Frank, can you tell us about
Well, I played originally at Fruit Park, Milton, before then, and I think I won it twice. I'm not quite sure, but I played Ken McGregor. He was a junior,
Yep.
and this year that I won it, he's only 16 years of age, and I was a Wimbledon champion. He gave me a pretty tough battle, and I beat him in 5 sets, but you could tell that he was going to be a champion. In the final, I think I played Art Larson, who was an American, and we played in a real strong wind, and he got a bit upset by the wind, and I was able to beat him in about 4 sets, I think.
And in that year, you didn't win the Australian Open, did you? The 1952?
No, I lost it in the final.
You would have had a grand slam if you had won that.
Oh, not quite. I lost in the final of the Australian.
Yes, but you won the other three.
Yeah. I lost in the final of the French as well.
Did you? Oh, that's my research. That's right.
Yeah, but I can remember a lot of... I coached a junior squad at Milton.
Did you?
Yes, for about 3 or 4 years. I took over from Harry Hopman, who had a coaching there with the Courier Mail.
Yep.
And I took over the Courier Mail coaching. We used to go up every year and coach all the young Queensland juniors. And we ran across some very good players. And one of them was Roy Emerson, one was Laver, I think. I think Laver was in the group for a while. And anyway, and Ken Fletcher was one of the people that I coached over there. Yeah, in that junior squad. And there was quite a lot of good young talent coming out of Queensland in those days.
And do you have a feel of why that was the reason?
Well, everybody played tennis in those days, and in Queensland, a lot of the people who lived in the country had their own tennis court, and they were very keen on tennis. It used to be the social part of the environment that they came. They used to have tennis tournaments in the country, and they used to have social days at weekends and all that sort of stuff. And I was with the Spalding Company, and I was up there quite a lot with going around to the country towns, and playing some exhibitions. But it was funny that Milton had a great deal of history behind it, because they didn't try to improve it much at all. They had old dressing sheds, and Adrian Quist went in there one time. He said, "Oh, I bought my own nail and hammer because there wasn't anything to hang my clothes on."
Yeah, so
I think you probably heard that story.
I have. Lots of people have actually brought a nail and hammer.
And another story was that I was a professional when I was up there doing TV for the commentary.
So this was after 53?
This was after 53, yes. And one of the things that there was a referee called Edgar Stumbles that was running the tournament. And for some reason, the groundsman made a mistake in the size of the tennis court, and he marked the lines about one end of the service court. One end was all right, but the other end, the service court was out of size. There was about a metre difference.
Bigger or smaller?
Bigger. And the players, Mervyn Rose was one of the players, and he said, you could tell that he was winning his serve very easily from one end, because anyway, they held up play and they went and measured the court. They stepped it out, and they found out that the court was out by about a couple of feet in the service box.
Yep.
He was holding his service very easily. Anyway, I went down to measure it myself, and I got kicked out of the centre court because they realised they'd made a mistake and they didn't want a lot of publicity about it. So Edgar Stumbles, he got very much criticised for that. But he was a referee, and anyway, that became a big talking point.
That is a great story. And what we might do is there's a connection to Frew Park, because Big Bill Edwards, who was the president of the Lawn Tennis Association in Queensland, I think would have taken somewhat of a dim view of that. And as the story evolves, it'll become apparent in later YouTubes. So, Frank, could you just tell us what your memory were of that?
Yes, well, I turned professional with Jack Kramer as a promoter. I played him a lot of matches in America, but then we came to Australia to play with him.
Yep.
And he was the promoter, and he made a deal with Big Bill Edwards, and he was very receptive at the start. But we played at Melbourne. We got pretty good crowds, and that was the first year. Then another year we came back and I played with Gonzales, Pancho Gonzales, and his mood changed a bit because he felt he was losing control of the amateur game in Australia, and he was also in Queensland. And
which was parochial at the best of times.
Yes, and then he barred us from playing at Milton. And
so what year would that be?
That'll be 54.
Okay, yeah.
And he had a secretary called Alf Shave, who was a tennis writer for the Courier Mail there. And Alf Shave was a delegate for Australia at the International Federation. And Jack Kramer was very keen on trying to make open tennis, because there were two factions, there was the amateurs running the game and there was us professionals. And the amateur game was falling off quite significantly. The Davis Cup wasn't getting the crowds, or the Australian Championships weren't getting the crowds. And Kramer felt that if we could bring in open tennis and make it legally to play for prize money, the game would go ahead. But see, in those days, a lot of the amateurs, even like Roy Emerson and Rod Laver, they were getting paid under the table as amateurs. And it was they were sort of professionals anyway, but anyway, the Big Bill opposed it all. But Alf Shave, he went over to London for a tournament, for a meeting, and they were going to really vote on whether professional tennis came in. And Jack Kramer had been doing all the lobbying with all the different nations around the place, who the delegates were, and who was going to vote for open tennis. And Alf Shave said he was going to vote for open tennis as Australia's delegate. And anyway, from Queensland. And we thought, oh, good, this is good, we're going to get open tennis. And then everybody could play, on one level. And anyway, they had a meeting and it got defeated. So the old system was where amateurs and professionals were miles apart.
Yeah.
And then took them about another 90 till 1968 to bring in open tennis. And then when they did bring in open tennis, it just showed that tennis needed it, because crowds increased, went through the roof. And but in the meantime, all this time, was the the tennis was played at Fruit Park, or Milton as we call it, and they had some Australian championships there, some of which Rod Laver won and Roy Emerson won. And it was, sad to see, though, that tennis really dropped off later on when Milton, fell into disrepair and, people didn't like to go there because of the way the state of the stands were,
Plenty of spinners.
Plenty of spinners, you're right. Anyway, that's the way I sort of saw the way that the tennis declined in Queensland.
Yep, yeah, I think you're exactly right there. With that, good afternoon again, ladies and gentlemen. And in this last segment of the YouTube interview this afternoon with Frank, I thought we'd just touch base and talk about two wonderful tennis players in Queensland. Daphne Searney, his married name is Daphne Fancutt, and the amphitheatre at Ken Fletcher Park is about to be named after Daphne. And I'm running a petition at the present stage to have the green at Fruit Park called after Wendy Turnbull. Frank, if I just ask you if you could just give some recollections of those two wonderful people.
Yes, well, the first one would be Wendy Turnbull, because I think I talked about running a coaching class up at Milton for the Courier Mail, and she was one of the girls that I happened to coach at that time. And she had a brother called Harold Turnbull as well, who was a very good player, but she became an exceptional player because she played a lot on the world circuit, and she won quite a number of doubles tournaments. And she made a good name for herself. One stage I answered a quiz question and somebody asked me, who's the greatest tennis player that's made the most money professionally? And for 1 year she made the most money. Yeah, and of course she's got a bit older now, and she plays.
Married name and talk about good afternoon again, ladies and gentlemen. And in this last segment of the YouTube interview this afternoon with Frank, I thought we'd just touch base and talk about two wonderful tennis players in Queensland. Daphne Searney, his married name is Daphne Fancutt, and the amphitheatre at Ken Fletcher Park is about to be named after Daphne. And I'm running a petition at the present stage to have the green at Fruit Park called after Wendy Turnbull. Frank, if I could just ask you if you could just give some recollections of those two wonderful people.
Yes, well, the first one would be Wendy Turnbull, because I think I talked about running a coaching class up at Milton for the Courier Mail, and she was one of the girls that I happened to coach at that time. And she had a brother called Harold Turnbull as well, who was a very good player, but she became an exceptional player because she played a lot on the world circuit, and she won quite a number of doubles tournaments. And she made a good name for herself. And one stage I answered a quiz question and somebody asked me, who's the greatest tennis player that's made the most money professionally? And for 1 year she made the most money. Yeah, and of course she's got a bit older now, and she plays quite a few veteran events in the States. And the other girl was Daphne Searney, as you say. She married Trevor Fancutt, who was a Davis Cup player for South Africa. And they regularly played at Wimbledon. And she became a very good tennis player, but didn't quite reach the heights of, say, Wendy Turnbull. But she had a big influence on the game in Queensland, because they opened a tennis centre where they coached a lot of kids, and she coached a lot of promising boys and girls that came up through Queensland. And she put a lot of time into Queensland tennis, and she got an AM from the government because of the work she did with tennis. And she was ever present at Wimbledon. I think last year was probably the first year she missed going to Wimbledon for about 50 years, I think.
She's living down the Gold Coast now in proper retirement.
Well, she had two good tennis playing sons as well. And, you know, she kept involved with tennis, and consequently, you know, she's got a terrific name, and she's done a wonderful lot for tennis.
Quite a unique piece of history actually in the Fan Cup family is that it's the only family ever to have the mother, the father and the two sons end up in Wimbledon.
Yes.
And it's just, and it was one reason why the Lord Mayor was so receptive to naming the beautiful amphitheatre at Ken Fletcher Park after Daphne, let alone the fact that a former Lord Mayor by the name of Sally Ann Atkinson was a very powerful advocate, shall I say. And as I said, Wendy Turnbull, that's just amazing that you coached her at the Courier Mail coaching clinic at Milton Free Park.
Yeah.
But that would have been across the road in Milton Park itself.
No, we played on the grass course.
In the proper...
Yeah,
because
we coached on the grass course. Yeah.
Okay, because they actually had tennis courts on both sides.
Yeah, they did, yeah. Hard courts on one side and the grass courts on the other side.
Yeah. So the fact I must point out to you. Anyway, Frank, this afternoon's interviews have been absolutely fantastic. I really do appreciate you taking time out to be part of this historic series of interviews. It's 100 years in 2015. Fruit Park would have been in existence, and even though the majority of the land was sold off, there was actually a small part of the park that stayed behind. So Fruit Park was in its now enlarged status, or re-enlarged status. It has actually been in existence with absolutely fantastic history. But you're an important part of 100 years next year.
No, good. Glad to be of help.
You've been very helpful indeed. Thank you very much.
Hi, this is Charlie Fankin. I hope you're enjoying the Fruit Park YouTube channel.